Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last session coming from 1 Samuel 7, God Restoring His People. Repackaging this with a different title, Samuel, Standing in the Shadow of both Moses and Joshua. I know this kind of seems very repetitive as we keep comparing some of these figures back to previous Old Testament figures, Moses and Joshua and Adam and all this, and sometimes stretching the strand all the way to Jesus. But the point is that the patterns are here for a reason, right? All of this, unbeknownst to these Old Testament authors at the time, is ultimately going to culminate and coalesce in the Messiah. At the time when these stories are being written, um, there really isn't an anticipation so much of a Messiah figure. That's not going to come until much later on in the period of the monarchy. But several of these prophets, especially men like Isaiah, are going to be talking about a period of great judgment and desolation that's going to be coming upon this apostate people. But God is going to continue this renewal effort by igniting one final exodus that's going to be spearheaded by essentially a new Moses and a new David figure. And this person is going to be combining both of those aspects into one person. And when he brings about this Exodus, it's going to be the last Exodus that's going to redeem all of Israel, essentially, and wrap up the rest of humanity, the nations somehow in all of this. So I just want to share that with you in case you're kind of getting a little bit exacerbated by the idea of going back to these people, right, and sharing the similarities of these stories. And it's important for us to point these things out because that interconnectedness between these stories is the very thing that those New Testament authors are banking on their readers already understanding. Or if it's a Gentile audience, their Jewish brothers and sisters who have heard these stories their whole lives, being able to help unlock these things for them as they take their new Gentile brothers and sisters through these Old Testament stories that they're just now being exposed to. So on the left of the screen, we have Moses at the Red Sea. In the middle of the screen, Joshua at Gibeon to help us understand a little bit better what's going on here at this moment when Samuel is leading Israel as a combatant commander at Mizpah. So working kind of right to left in 1 Samuel 7, here we have Samuel telling the people, if you are returning to the Lord with your heart, then get rid of the foreign gods, set your hearts on the Lord, worship him only. Well, this is exactly what Joshua told the people in his farewell address. This is not Samuel's farewell address, though. Samuel is but a young prophet. He is just starting his ministry around this particular time, as goes the more full recognition of his ministry, as goes what he's doing to lead the people beyond just speaking as a prophet. Because Joshua told them, therefore, fear the Lord your God, worship him, get rid of the gods of your ancestors. And then, of course, Moses is prophetically speaking about a time period in the future when these people may turn their hearts away from God and God brings the judgment upon them and maybe even exile. And he says, when all these things have happened to you, return to the Lord, obey him with all your heart and soul. So these words filtering over into what Joshua is telling them, though that Joshua is leading them at a period when they're more faithfully fidelitous to the Lord. But here in a place where Samuel is leading, that's not the case. So he's echoing the words of Moses. In a very similar fashion. Back to 1 Samuel 7. So the Philistines heard the Israelites had gathered at Mizpah. They rally their troops and they go to fight against them. When the Israelites heard that they were advancing, they're afraid because of the Philistines, and rightly so. I mean, they've been oppressing them for 40 years. It's very similar to the account here when Moses has the people of Israel hemmed up by the Red Sea and they're shut in by the advancing Israelites. They're terrified and they begin to cry out to the Lord for help. So as the people begin to cry out to Samuel, Samuel's trying to quell their fear. And then we hear the Lord thundering loudly against the Philistines that day. And he threw them into such confusion that they were fully, wholeheartedly defeated by Israel. We saw this kind of thing happening many times over in the stories of Joshua. But certainly Gibeon happens to be one of those because as they were marching all night from Gilgal, the Lord threw them into confusion before Israel. So that transition between the late hours of the evening before into the early hours of the morning when the battle campaign starts is very much like the Red Sea moment when all night long God is blowing an east wind, causing the water to separate, and then allowing Israel to walk through. When in the early morning hours, that's of course when Egypt is now made aware of what God has been doing all night long, and then they chase them into the heart of the Red Sea where God throws them into confusion and then he causes their ultimate demise when they are destroyed in the sea. So this story leads over to this moment when Joshua is reaping this great victory in Gibeon when he calls the sun to stand still to extend the hours of the day so he can chase down the enemies of the Lord to ultimately be defeated. And then, of course, with that, we bleed this story over into the story of 1 Samuel when the Philistines are nigh on the heels of Israel as they are all pent up at Mizpah, giving their hearts back to the Lord and seeking him now in spirit and in truth, as it were. And the Lord then thunders out against them, throws them into the confusion as he did the people of Egypt, as he did the coalition led by Jerusalem and Gibeon, now to bring about the defeat of the Philistines. Finishing up here in 1 Samuel 7, the men of Israel charged out from Mizpah, pursued the Philistines, striking them down all the way to a place below Beth-kar. And this is exactly what happens here with these coalesced armies when Joshua slaughters them greatly and doesn't leave any survivors. Lastly, in 1 Samuel 7, verse 12, Samuel took a stone and he set it upright at Mizpah and Shan, and he named it Ebenezer, saying, "The Lord has helped us up to this point." So it's kind of interesting because back in the moment when Moses brought the people of Israel through the Red Sea, he leads them in a great song of triumph where he calls the Lord his God his strength, their song, their salvation. He is worthy of all praise, and that they will exalt him. So even though a stone is not raised as a monument here, yet it's a moment when God is admonished for the victory he's wrought. But Joshua later on, after this great campaign, which all the land is now subdued before Yahweh, erects a stone after he's written all these things in the book of the law. And as he sets the stone up there under the oak tree at the sanctuary of the Lord, it becomes a monument to the people to remember, to always look back and remember what God has done in bringing victory. And so perhaps that's what influences Samuel to do the same. But he takes it a step further and actually names it so that the people would remember that up to this particular point, not just for this battle campaign, but for their existence as a nation, that the Lord has helped them. Well, we'll unpack this more when we get to our last and final workshop. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you will be able to contact me through my email or cell phone number with that information that I'm giving you in my email to you. It has all this package in it. So thank you for your time. And I do appreciate all the participation that you give in this.